David Beckham in the news today. Has he sprayed on his new hairdo? Have you seen it? Well, once there was nothing. Looks like there's definitely something. Certainly darker, a bit thicker for that matter. But for many whose outlook is thinner, a simple spray-on solution might be quite welcome. Spencer Stevenson's an expert in hair loss. He's had a number of different restorative treatments himself, and he joins us on BBC Radio Stoke this afternoon. Spencer, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
David Beckham's people are saying this is a private matter, but is the man who gave us the mohawk, the man bun and braids losing it on top, in your opinion?
In my opinion, unfortunately for poor David, whose hair's always in the media, he's certainly thinning out slightly, and I agree that, these pictures in the paper with his hair looking a lot darker and matted and incredibly thicker compared to where he was a week ago, begs the question if he is in fact using concealers, which in my opinion, I think he might well be indeed.
What's a concealer? I kind of get from the name what it does, but how does it work?
Yeah, good question. Well, concealers, there's a number of different types of concealers. The most common one is one called nanogen, which are nanogen fibers, which are small creatine fibers which magnetize to the hair shaft, which in turn volumize the hair and make it look thicker. It gives it the appearance of a thicker head of hair. But the telltale sign, in my opinion, is how you mentioned on the intro there, how much darker his hair appears, and it kind of loses its texture if you use too much of it, which is obviously whilst there's a great deal of media speculation which we've been involved with, and hence why we're on the show talking about it today, because poor David.
How much does hair matter?
It depends on the individual. Personally, for me, hair was a great part of my identity growing up, and when I lost it, it really affected my self-esteem and my confidence. So it's a hidden epidemic, hair loss. There's a multi-billion-pound industry out there, and it's important that individuals that want to do something about their hair loss get accurate and honest information, because the industry, unfortunately, is governed by money, and it can take the vulnerable by take a lot of money off the vulnerable, unfortunately.
By the short and curlies, no pun intended. You've spent what some might think is a fortune on restoring your own hair. Just talk me through why you went down that route.
I have spent a small fortune, but for me it was all worth it because I now sport a full head of hair. I made a number of mistakes along the way and had to initially had poor hair transplant surgery after trying a number of different treatments. And having bad hair transplant surgery led me into the tunnel of requiring further hair transplants to repair the situation. However, what transpired from that is I'm involved in the hair loss and hair transplant industry to kind of help empower and educate others from making the same mistakes I did on a number of different resources to help what is a silent epidemic. There are millions of men out there waking up today that want to do something about their hair loss.
So when you have a hair transplant, whose hair have you got? Where did it come from?
You've got your own. It's like it comes from the back, where it's genetically coded to last a lifetime, and it's transplanted from the back and put into the front. But what is key here is the procedure itself is a very complex procedure, and it's very important that it's performed by an ethical, skillful surgeon who knows what he's doing. And the problem that we have currently in this space, in this industry, is a high number of cowboy clinics that are performing really poor work, and which is why I am vigilant in trying to educate and make sure people make the right decisions. And there are a number of different resources out there to help educate people and get them informed so they don't make mistakes. We have a FUE Europe, have a big conference coming up in Manchester, where people can come and actually talk to surgeons and establish what's right and what's wrong within hair transplant surgery, because there are a lot of glossy adverts out there luring people in, telling them what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And surgery, ironically, is a last resort. You need to go down proven treatments to get your hair loss under control, because hair loss is progressive. And if you don't get a hold on it and stabilize the situation, you're not necessarily going to be a good hair transplant candidate.
What about tattoos? I've seen adverts for men who have essentially little black dots where their hair follicles would be, which gives the impression that you've got incredibly short hair, but plenty of it.
Indeed, I've personally had it done. It's called advanced trichopigmentation, or you can have SMP, which is a temporary version of it. And in the right hands, again, with the right technicians, it's incredible. It can look incredibly natural and give you a sense, the 5 o'clock shadow. People are renowned for it. Famous A-list celebrities like The Rock or Vin Diesel, who sport that very short look. But it's becoming a very common procedure, especially standalone and alongside hair transplantation, because it can thicken up the appearance of the hair. But again, it's really important that procedure, if you're considering it, it's done by a very good experience kind of clinic. And there are, again, a number of cowboy clinics out there that are promising the world. And this is where it's important that the consumer does their research.
Stay with us for a moment, Spencer. We'll just break for the travel, then we'll come back with a little advice for people who are thinning on top.
BBC Radio 800 121 8080.
BBC Radio Stoke.
Spencer Stevenson with us on BBC Radio Stoke this afternoon, talking not just about David Beckham's hair, but his own hair and everyone else's too. So, Spencer, you mentioned a couple of times that sort of cowboy outfits, people who maybe are kind of preying on people who are desperate to find a solution for their baldness. How do you pick a good one?
That's a really good question, and there are a number of resources out there to enable you to get informed and empowered. My recommendation to you, anybody that's listening, is to certainly consider looking into the International Alliance of Hair Restoration Surgeons. There are FUE Europe surgeons, and there are really good forums out there, such as Hair Loss Experiences in the UK and the Bald Truth Talk. We also run, and I'm part of a co-host, a show called The Bald Truth, which is a radio show where people can call in and share their anxieties and vent, because hair loss, unfortunately, is, as I've said before, a bit of a hidden epidemic, and everybody suffers in silence with it. And it's really nice to be able to talk and share and, get rid of those emotions which are essentially triggered by hair loss, because until you've experienced hair loss, it's a very difficult emotion to comprehend, and you are very isolated with it. It affects your self-esteem and it affects your confidence. And it's nice to know there's a community out there to get informed opinions and accurate information above all.
And for people listening this afternoon to BBC Radio Stoke who maybe wake up in the morning and find they've got hair on their pillow, they look behind themselves in the shower and they see the hair clogging up or going down the plug hole and they're thinking it's going. What should they do? Because you said you have to kind of catch it before it's too late almost.
Well, it's yeah, indeed, and many people do panic initially, and they go to Dr. Google and they try and find out what to do. There are proven treatments, and predominantly I'm mainly speaking to men here who suffer from male pattern baldness. Once you know you've got that diagnosed, speak to your GP, get it confirmed. There are proven treatments out there, such as minoxidil, which can help, and also a prescription medication called finasteride, which you need to speak to your GP about, or there are online pharmacies as well, to get a sense of getting your hair loss under control, because they are proven to help. And unfortunately, there are 99% of products and services that are sold in this industry do not work. So get informed, take your time, and above all, do not rush in. That's a very important point to make to any hair loss sufferers, because we are desperate and we are vulnerable once we realise and we have that realisation that we are experiencing hair loss.
Spencer, great to talk to you this afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us on BBC Radio Stoke. You can find out more about Spencer Stevenson on his website, spexhair.com. Later on, BBC Radio Stoke's Richie Anderson's been to meet a barber in Nantwich.